way up high, and the dreams that you dreamed of once in a lullaby. High, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dream of, dreams really do come true. Ooh, someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Hi, Natalia.
Hey Darius, I love the song choice.
You know what? You are all about life by design, so I thought we could sing a little bit of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So thanks for joining me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for the invitation.
Guys, welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh, and boy, do we have a special guest for you. My friend, Natalia Berdakian, is here with us on the show. Natalia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Guys, for those of you guys that are new to the Greatness Machine, you will learn that we are about two things. We're about people who are creating passion, or people who are creating greatness, and those who are living their passions. And Natalia is neither short of passion nor greatness, so we're so lucky to have her here. I always like to give a little bit of background about how I've been introduced to people who are on the show. Natalia, do you mind if I give a little bit of our backstory?
By all means, no secrets here.
All right. Well, you guys, for those of you guys that have been watching the show for a while, we've been doing the show, gosh, it's over about almost a year and a half now. And so I had a previous guest, Christina Harbridge, and she sent me an email a few months ago and was like, oh my gosh, I have the perfect guest for you. You have to hook up with Natalia. So we had a conversation, and I knew right away. I said, oh man, she would be perfect for the show. You guys, we really like to explore diverse types of topics, and this whole idea of life by design, which Natalia promotes, we'll be talking about today. But yeah, that was how I met you, and I was so happy that Christina hooked us up. And Christina's a friend, and she's a show a supporter of the show. So I trust her very much, and for her to introduce us, just it means a lot. So I'm so glad to have you here.
And it's a pleasure to have met you through Christina.
Definitely. So, you guys, I want to, if you don't mind, it's late. Natalia's in Spain, so it's a little late where she's at. But I wanted to jump right into the show and kind of give your background. Do you mind if I read your formal bio really quickly?
By all means, yeah.
All right, I'll pull it up here, guys. We have Natalia on the show, and she's the founder and chief energy officer of Life by Design Academy. She comes from the corporate and entrepreneurial world with over 20 years in international business development and management. She applies her vast experience in living in 6 different countries, handling change, deep exposure to different industries while finding creative solutions to complex situations. She has proven systems helps individuals and organizations grow beyond mental or geographical boundaries to achieve lasting change, eliminating obstacles that stand in the way of reaching their full potential, fulfillment, well-being, and success. Man, that is a mouthful. So let me ask you a question. Like, give us the one sentence. Like, what do you do with all that when you work with folks? Are you working with companies? You're going in there. You're working with individuals, leaders. Like, what? Give us your entrepreneurial story, background, and how it leads to what you're doing right now.
My personal entrepreneurial story.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for a good question. Well, the story started as an entrepreneurial story. It started when I was little, selling the vegetables and fruits from my grandma's country house at the age of 8, 9, I think. And then all sorts of education going from past Soviet Union to California, back to Europe, Amsterdam, Barcelona, etc. And then I was quite some time in the corporate world before I moved back to the entrepreneurship, running a chocolate factory with my business partner previously, and then having a complete transformation over several years ago and going into coaching, energy leadership coaching, which made my world so much bigger since. And so when I work with folks, as you say, the companies, individuals, entrepreneurs, founders, and the leaders, I bring all of that great understanding of where might they be coming from, whether it is a cultural background, an industry background, functional background, whatever they've been going through in their personal and professional lives. Because at the end of the day, everything is pretty much interrelated and everything affects everything. And so I just love it.
Yeah.
It's so big and it's so deep. There is no limit to how what we can talk about and how far they can go in their greatness.
What so when you obviously you've been entrepreneurial for most of your life. Where in the Soviet Union were you brought up?
Moscow.
Oh wow, okay, so you're
I
Russian.
was lucky in the sense. Yeah, I was Russian. I'm Russian. Well, I have a dual nationality with Spain.
And so
And
so you grew up and so I'm assuming you grew up in during like Soviet rule in a more in an environment that was, I mean, arguably not capitalistic, right? I mean, obviously there was like micro capitalism going on there, but to grow up in that environment, and then when did you leave Soviet Union? How old were you?
so at 16, I went to California as an exchange student, winning
Okay.
a program for a handful of people that US was supporting the Russians going to US and integrating with the in the culture in the country. Whatever the purpose was, I don't know how far the integration went. Clearly, there's still struggles there. But for me, that was quite a change, from Moscow to California, from small apartment to suburb houses and American families and kids, the language of which I hardly understood at the time. Um, and I had that thought, well, if I can understand my host sister, I can understand everybody here and finish school successfully, which happened, luckily, but it's quite a journey. So, in terms of challenges and adaptation, whether it's to cultures, to lifestyle, to the climate, to everything, that was a start of a continuous journey, understanding that change is the only constant, and there's so much out there that we don't know, and getting out of the comfort zones might as well get comfortable.
Yeah. So where in California did you land? What part? I grew up in
Well,
California.
cool. Which part?
Well, so I grew up in Southern California in Orange County, and then and I have a little bit of a multicultural background. My father's from Iran originally, and so we immigrated to the United States. I grew born in the United States, but moved back to Iran, and then when they had a revolution, we moved back to Southern California, in Orange
Oh,
County, and then when
amazing.
as an adult, from basically from after I finished university, I lived in San Francisco. So from that point.
Thank you for sharing that. And how was it for you to go back to US after?
I was really young, so I mean, I was, I'm 43, so that happened. I was in Tehran when that happened, and that was 1979. I was 1.5 years old, so I actually don't remember it. I think the only part that I remember was I grew up watching my father, who was pretty, it severely affected his life. He was in his 40s and 50s when he was 40 when he immigrated to the United States permanently. Um, so growing up watching someone have a lot of trauma and regret around their life and the choices they made because kind of, I think he felt like his life was stolen from him.
Yeah,
He had a
yeah.
very good life before that happened in Iran. And so yeah, it was confusing, I think. I mean, I didn't know any different. I grew up, growing up multicultural is interesting because you're, culturally, you all your friends are American, right? And my mom's American. Sorry, my mom's full American. So I grew up very with an American. Half my family's Italian American. She was first generation. Her father was from Italy. But having a father who preferred to speak Farsi, like only ate Persian food. His friends were only Persian. He only watched Persian TV. He only listened to Persian music. And I didn't speak Farsi, so I don't know. It's interesting. I appreciate it now much more as an adult than as a kid. I was probably more resentful of it. It was not something that I embraced. But as an adult now, I look back on it, and it's made me into a more diverse person. I understand the differences in different cultures just because I grew up around it.
Definitely. And that affected also the interactions in the family and the atmosphere in the family and the way your mother had to. embrace that culture as well and the way it affected you.
Yeah, definitely. My mother would make two different dinners. She would make a Persian dinner for my dad because he wouldn't eat American food, or he would not eat anything but Persian food, more or less. And the kids, Persian food's very strong flavors. So for a child, that's not, you literally just eat rice because you're like, oh, the stews are strong. And but yeah, it's looking back. I mean, it wasn't a very unified culturally. It was not aligned. There was a
Yeah,
misalignment,
yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting to watch and see. But yeah, it's made me who I am. So it's
And I really wonder how that affected your core values. You've written a book about it.
yeah, my number one core value is happiness, and I fight for that a lot. It's I don't think happiness is a destination. I think it's it's a journey. Um, and I've done talks on this when I've spoken about the book, where I will say that my personal core values were born out of, let me back up for a step. Someone asked me once, they said, why did you why do you care so much about core values? And I hadn't been asked that question before. I don't know, it's kind of a strange question to be asked, but I realized that I grew up around a person, my father, who was very disengaged, preoccupied mentally, was not a happy person. He struggled with happiness because of, what had happened to him in his life. And so for me, my number one value is happiness, and my number six value is balance. And my dad wasn't a very balanced person either. And I struggle with both of those a lot, but I fight for them. When I'm out of alignment, as I've gotten older and gotten more, I think, attuned or aware of how I'm showing up, those are the things that usually will go first. I'll either get out of balance or I'll get unhappy. And when I get out of balance, I usually get unhappy. But I will credit the experience of watching my father's experience as kind of landing on me in that way. And now it's become something I'm passionate about, where it's, hey, how can you build a stronger family unit with shared values? How can your business is an opportunity, your friends are an opportunity, your family is an opportunity. But yeah, that's been a big part for me. Well, what about yourself? Like, coming to the U.S. from the Soviet Union, from Russia, as a teenager, not speaking the language. I mean, how do you think that affected what you value, or how you've kind of taken your values as an adult now?
Thank you for the question. Now that I look what I answered on your question, what my core values would be, and it says learning, freedom, and diversity, pretty much explains it all. Because since the U.S. times, and while I was always a very curious person and very eager to break through the rules and question the status quo, but I think after that, and we're talking about mid 90s here, going back to Russia and then actually moving to Europe, for me, the value of learning and growing and always being curious and always knowing there's more out there, that fight for freedom in many different ways. As you can imagine, historically, Russia has always been in the midst of fighting for its own freedom and in all the wars and everything. And the diversity part, considering that Soviet Union is a former Soviet Union, is a very diverse place. I mean, I have maybe I don't know how many nationalities in me. I can consider myself Russian, but I'm sure there are at least 10 different nationalities if you would count all kind of Soviet Union ones, and then we have a lot of close by countries there, including Middle East and everything. And then with the diversity, the understanding, well, the ability, the need to adapt to different cultures. US is a big melting pot, which for me was extremely fascinating. You just mentioned at least three different cultures that you grew up in, and that's amazing. And then having lived in six different countries in Europe, every country is so different. I would not, I mean, people would think Belgium and Holland are very similar, but no, they both can speak Dutch, but those are very different dialects, those are very different cultures. And people that have lived there can see the differences and know it very well. And then Europe as such, I mean, 20 plus countries, 20 plus cultures, multiple languages. And for me, coming out of the country that only spoke Russian at the time, moving to Holland and Belgium, where people speak 5 to 9 languages, is amazing,
Yeah.
speaking of diversity. And that just made me realize how small something can be and how much more there is out there. So the ego can become that small in comparison, so there's always that thirst for learning, and hence that being the first value.
Oh, I love that. My number five value is curiosity. So we share that value. What so when you moved, it's funny you make the reference between Holland and is it Holland and Belgium? Those are the two places you
Mhm.
lived, right?
Netherlands, yeah,
Oh,
the
pardon
Netherlands.
me. Yeah, Netherlands. And so, um, yeah, I think a lot of times, especially in America, people are, I don't even think that they kind of make the consideration. It's like, yeah, Texas and California speak the same language, but they couldn't be more different, right? I actually live in Austin, Texas now, having moved here from San Francisco, and they're, we're all in the United States, but they are again very different states, very different people, culturally different dialects, and the way people speak the language of English. And I don't think people necessarily in the United States give that same credit internationally to the way other countries are, how different European countries are one country to the next. So I think that's really cool that you've gotten to experience that. So now you're in Spain though, is that correct?
I'm in Barcelona, yeah.
How long have
Yeah.
you been in Barcelona for?
I used to live here 12 years ago before I moved to Belgium, so I kind of came back.
And do you speak Spanish?
I do. I even have Spanish nationality.
Oh, that's so cool. So there's a TV show that I just started watching that's based in Spain. That's like this really popular show. Let me look it up really quickly. But I can I tell you this funny story really quickly? All right. I decided that if I'm going to watch TV at nighttime, it's called The Money Heist. Have you heard of this show?
Okay. I think I've seen the advertisements.
It's a
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really popular show in Spain supposedly. So I was like, okay, like if I'm going to watch TV at nighttime, I'm only going to watch it in Spanish. Like I'm only going to watch TV shows in Spanish, and
Oh.
therefore, like I can get like I'm going to practice Spanish just by only watching Spanish television with subtitles. And I watched the TV show Narcos,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a bunch of it's based in Colombia and Mexico. And so I was like, oh, it's a great show. It's 40 episodes, so it's 40 hours of me watching subtitled television. And I had a friend that said, yeah, a lot of people that I've met who learn English, the way they say they learn it is by watching television. And I said, oh, well,
Definitely,
that
yeah.
makes sense, right? I said, well, I'm just going to watch only Spanish television until I can become fluent in Spanish. So this is a new idea I have. So
It's
the
cool.
reason I bring this up is I went and Googled like great, TV shows in Spanish, and I find the Money Heist show, and I put it on, and it's based in Spain. And my wife, who's my wife's, she's French Mexican American, but she lived in Mexico and she speaks fluent Spanish. And so I said to her, I said, hey, I have a question for you. This is like yesterday. And she said, what's that? I said, do people in Spain speak Spanish faster than in Mexico? And she said, yeah, like the Spanish speak Spanish, like the maybe it's the dialect or the speed of the language. But I noticed that like there is a distinct difference in the speed of the language of Spanish in Spain compared to Mexico. Have you ever noticed that before?
I've been to Mexico 2 years ago. It's definitely a different accent and dialect, and I love the country, love the people. I would say, yeah, and it depends also in the part of Spain. If you were to go to Madrid, they are very articulate. I lived in Tenerife and Canary Islands, so the people come from the mountains. They eat half of the words. So I have learned Canarian, and for some time I had to sort of relearn it again because people saying, "Oh, you speak different Spanish. You speak Canarian, and like the endings don't exist." So and they speak very fast. Like when I moved to the island, they're like I had the same feeling like I had when I was 16 in California trying to understand the kid. I like if I can understand my father-in-law because he speaks so fast and eats half of the words, then I will learn the language, which I did. So,
That's
but yeah.
amazing. How many
So it's
languages?
either that or subtitled movies.
Yeah. So wait, so how many languages do you speak then?
I'd say four and a half.
Oh my
Well, the
gosh.
half being the Dutch that I understand, but I never spoke. It never landed with me pronunciation wise, or maybe it's
Wow.
just an excuse.
So I want to back up. So you became an entrepreneur. You said you started a chocolate company. Can you tell us about that?
I joined a partnership with my partner. Yeah, it's a 130-year-old brand in Belgium that produces a very niche product. You know, when babies are born or for weddings or communions, they give dragée, a chocolate coated nuts or chocolate coated almonds or sugar coated chocolate, which is beautiful. I At some point I called it like sophisticated M&Ms and different shapes and forms and multiple colors, beautiful
Wow.
colors. So it's really beautiful. We had silver coating items from real edible silver, which were beautiful, to all kind of other colors. And so beautiful product, beautiful factory, and it's a beautiful experience. And then at some point in time, I realized that a lot of those values of mine are just not entirely aligned with whatever happens in reality for me. I just was completely misaligned with, well, it's a little against my values to sell 80% sugar items. So
Okay.
that was a first one. And basically now, instead of sweetening the lives of people with high sugar items, I'm sweetening it by helping them in a different way and making them happy and healthy at the same time. So yeah.
I love that. So yeah. So tell us about um, Life by Design. Like, when did that come to be? How did you start that? That's your coaching and consulting practice. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, yes. So at that point, few years ago, I found myself completely mentally, emotionally drained. You know, like when the energy sort of leaves you while you still do everything and you love what you do, but you feel completely drained and exhausted and overwhelmed and all of that at once makes you feel a little stuck and frustrated. So I realized something had to change. And clearly, that misalignment aspect was like, okay, something is wrong. I just didn't know what it was. And I read all the books about values, about intuition, about all that stuff. I thought I had no intuition because I was listening too much to my head at the time. And and that's when things had to change, and I went to one of those EO events in Peru for all the places, and it's sort of like the lump went on, and I found the education. I went into the whole re-education and went into the coaching institute that had the core energy aspect to it, because coaching is coaching. You help people move to their optimal state, right? It's all about moving forward and reaching their goals and helping them to do that. Now this one starts with the core of who we are. Now you talk about core values. Well, we talk about core energy. What is at the core, the essence of who you are, at the core of your thoughts, emotions, and actions? Because we can build all kind of strategies to reach our goals, but either our energy is not in it and it doesn't give us that potential and that greatness to get there, or when we do reach our objectives and goals and we put that check, we don't have that sense of fulfillment and happiness, and we wonder why. So, and there's a lot of that alignment part in there that we work with, understanding what is actually happening and how can they be, great and feel good at the same time.
What do you? Can I ask you a question on that?
Sure.
So how this is just because I had a previous guest, and we were just talking about what drives people, and it was, we landed on and this is a very successful entrepreneur, and he's made lots and lots of money and built lots of businesses, and we kind of landed on this idea that trauma, people's trauma has created and destroyed a lot in the world, right? And people, and so when we start talking about essence, or we start talking about who people are, and especially if you're coaching people, in with their energy, how do you work around people's trauma when you're, because I think trauma is this thing that's interspersed and weaved and almost tangled up in the essence of who people are. At least I've noticed that, at least from my own experience. But what are your thoughts on that?
Right. So when one note there, I'm not a therapist.
Right.
So with the coaching, it's all about going from functional to optimal, and therapies call it dysfunctional to functional. So when it comes to deep traumas, I would direct people to experts in the therapy, psychology,
Sure.
psychoanalysis, and all that stuff. Just to because you can harm rather than help or
Yeah.
something. And so, in terms of how I would approach trauma in the coaching standpoint, we look at what the blocks are. What are the energy blocks? So we look at the key four being the limiting beliefs, the interpretations, assumptions, and fears. So a lot of the stuff, traumas, right? Whatever comes in the past that keeps hunting us. And it's like this heavy backpack, the luggage that we're taking with. And it could be the limiting belief that, or an assumption that if something happened in the past, it's going to repeat itself. I was traumatized before, and, you know, I was, let's say, and that if I meet the same behavior now in that person that traumatized me back then, I automatically think that this is how it's going to end up. So I'm not going to go there. And the thing is, when you have those thoughts, those limiting beliefs or the biases or whatever, the fears, they block you and they paralyze you in the moment. And they take you away from your, best optimal self, that potential that intuition you have, that ability to make great decisions in the moment because of all that baggage. And it might have been real, you have experienced it before, but now how is it real right now, and how is this serving you, taking it with you for the next ride? So we are reframing a lot, we're really peeling the onion, seeing what's actually going on there, and what can you do about it, and which rules do you want to build that can serve you rather than keep on dragging you down, for example.
So when you talk about energy and limiting beliefs being one of them, you said there's four. What were the other three?
Limiting beliefs, assumptions, interpretations, and fears.
And so when you're working with folks doing the Life by Design Academy, is the idea that they're here at point A and they want to optimize to point B, C, D, E prime, whatever they're trying to go to. And is it really just helping them break down these four different energies and kind of giving them the tools and the accountability, or the tools and the support to get past those limiting beliefs so that they can optimize their life? Am I thinking of that properly?
Certainly. So that is one of the elements. So the core, the blocks, the energy blocks that we just mentioned, those are the one of the elements. Then we go into seeing what is influencing their energy, what is actually stressing them out. What are the triggers? It can be spiritual and has nothing to do with religion. Like, how aligned are you with your values? We come back to the same thing. And that is a very heavy one. The values, the beliefs, the mission, the vision. And a lot of that is linked to the past and the society norms and the culture you grew up in and how you're raised with your parents in the school, and but Mr. X is that and whatever. All of that stuff creates our belief system. And so aligning and understanding who you are, so creating that awareness is very important, and understanding where are you in misalignment, where are your values not being met, you know um, the example, running a company with a product that is not aligned with my value system is going to drain me, is going to, because I always going to question, is this what I want to do? Is this right? Can we develop something else? No, we can't. You just have to do it the way it is. Well, I will, but I don't have my full energy in it. Simple. And so we look at all these influences, environmental, physical, mental, society, social. How is this affecting us? If we haven't slept enough, if we haven't had enough nutrition and air and whatnot, we're not in our optimal state of functioning. And if people are not aware of that, they just keep on pushing themselves. And then sooner or later, the machine breaks down. And then we wonder what actually happened. We either get sick, we get burned out, we get frustrated, we exhibit it because energy attracts like energy, and it's the way we show up. It's the way we experience everything. And therefore, it creates certain results that are not necessarily efficient, productive, and lead us to that sense of fulfillment and happiness because it's just against our system and our everything.
So, thank you for sharing that. One of the things you said that I found pretty fascinating, and I left. I actually exited my company about a year ago, and I was in the mortgage lending space for about 20 years, and I kind of hit that point that you're talking about where I didn't feel. I mean, I built a rather good sized business. It was about 1,000 employees, and it was a big company. Um, but I felt like there was like something missing in my life, and I wasn't very excited about the product. The product was not didn't go against my values necessarily, but it didn't excite me either. I didn't feel very fulfilled by the product. And so I ended up, I jokingly said, yeah, there was this whisper of discontent that became a scream, you know, about it didn't take very long. It took about 18 months. And then I just decided I just didn't want to do it anymore. So I exited the company. But do you find that is that, you mentioned something around the products, in your life, the product was misaligned with your values. I don't know if the product was, maybe the product was misaligned with my values in the sense that one of my values is being passionate, and I just wasn't very passionate about that business product. I liked running the business, and I liked the culture side of the business, and I liked the scale side of the business, and I liked creating impact in people's lives, but the product in of itself was just didn't do anything for me. Do you find that is common? Is that uncommon? Common? Do you see that more often than not? What are your thoughts on that?
It is very so. The purpose, the meaning in life, the passion is all going into that influencer. So if we don't see it, it is taking the energy. So like if you have 100% energy available to you, accessible to you, and some of that energy is being drained and is being, we call it catabolic, you can call it negative or positive, the energy, but catabolic energy is basically a draining, disruptive energy that if you're too much into that state, it also creates physical effects. That's why it is affecting our health system. It is affecting the way we are able to focus and be effective and productive and whatnot. So all of that affects. So, and we can be machines and just keep going and saying, well, what's wrong? I can be productive. I done that yesterday. Why can't I do it today? I'm capable of doing it. The product is okay. I know what to do, so I might as well keep doing it. But in reality, it doesn't work like that, because what happens is that our belief system and whatever is behind it creates our thoughts, and our thoughts create our feelings and emotions, and that is affecting our behaviors and our actions and therefore results. So whatever thought we have, which is created by a reality or not, that's why we're going into understanding what is actually, where is that thought coming from.
Right.
But and all this is being affected. So when I work with people, they come and say, well, my team is not effective, or I'm frustrated about this situation and I don't know how to change it. And there's a conflict with a business partner or whatever, and we really cascade down understanding what is actually behind it, what is at the core of those thoughts and emotions or actions or inactions for that matter. Why is the team not performing? Because technically they're capable, right? They did that yesterday or last
Mhm.
year. Well, where are the sales? And then you dig in and you find out all these limiting beliefs and all these fears and all those assumptions and all these things that are being influenced, whether it's their core values, whether it is, the passions change, or that they haven't spoken or visited people and it's really draining their energy not meeting anybody for the last half a year and just talking to the screen. We cannot disregard all these things that actually do influence our energy or our mind or our body. Call it energy, call it perspective, call it mindset, call it whatever, but we are going through different layers with customers, and there are 7 different levels of energy, from feeling like a victim and powerless to being in the state of conflict and fighting and defensiveness to being in the state of tolerance and rationalizing, which a lot of people stay in for a long time thinking, well, it's good enough, I might just make it work, right? And you could have done that for many more years, but you know that there's more out there. You can connect more to your passion and to your values and to your intuitively, So we're moving people up to a higher energy state or a higher energy resonance, changing their thoughts and therefore the way they feel and therefore the way they're capable of acting and being productive, effective, and ultimately feel good about it and have that sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in what they do.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. Um, you know, speaking of the people that are going through this process, obviously you're very heavily involved with entrepreneurs organization. It sounds to me like executives, leaders, entrepreneurs are those more or less a lot of your clients. Is that what you focus on?
Correct, yes.
So yeah, like what types of folks are coming to you? Like, are you doing one-on-one coaching? Are you working with companies direct? Tell us a little bit more about how you're working with your clients right now.
I do both. Everything starts with an individual. So, as you know, no one can be coached if it doesn't want to be coached and it doesn't is not open to question status quo and be able to be open to questions. And it's the same for ourselves. Are we able to look in the mirror and dig deeper, or we think we know it all? And when people are ready to, when they understand that there is more out there and that they are capable of more and that they are able potentially live the life of their dreams and be a creator of their experience rather than being at the effect of their own energy or other people or situations, they are open to this kind of work that we do, and we move their energy, we move the energy and the dynamics of the team, the way people work and interact together, the way they show up, the way they deal with situations, um, find those win-win solutions and opportunities coming from a different mindset and a different perspective. And that's beautiful. I find it extremely fulfilling. So, whether it's individuals or teams, but all starts with one person
Hmm.
that wants to move forward and gets to that optimal state, a state of the effective leadership and well being at the same time without the sense of struggle and effort as much.
Yeah, I love that so much. And so when you look at, and you're right, it's like it starts with the individual. And your point, you can't force someone to want to be something they don't want to be. No, that's an impossibility, right? I mean, no one, even if someone does it inauthentically, it won't stick. What when you look at success stories, like folks who you've worked with, who have had the biggest successes or the biggest transformations or the best outcomes to create the so-called life by design, What does that look like on the other side?
On the other side for them.
Yeah, like what are some like if someone's sitting here listening to this podcast right now, and we have we have a lot of listeners, and they're a lot of the stuff, some folks might not buy into this because they, the energy words are woo woo, and it's a
Right.
little bit, it's a little. I love it. Like for me, I get it. You're I got a woo woo side of me, and you're speaking right to it right now, so it's all good for me. But I know a lot of people that their guard goes up the minute they start you say the word energy, their guard goes up. That's maybe they have a more traditional mindset around these things, or they're just not open to this type of conversation. But
Hmm.
what I found with folks who are more resistant to this is they're just like binary, more results driven, right? And I kind of blend the two worlds together. I go, yeah, you're right. Like the results have to be good, or else why make an investment of time, energy, unless we get good results? What do you like when you say someone creates their life by design? What does that look like for you don't have to tell us names of people, but what would be an example of people you've worked with when they come in and they're not enthusiastic, or they're not energetic about what they're doing, and then what does it look like on the other side once they've kind of
Right.
cleared those roadblocks?
Sure. Well, point one, when speaking of energy, it is physics, and Stein talked a lot about it. So I can go into the nitty gritty of the energy stuff from the scientific standpoint. So for the people that are, more rational, it actually makes a lot of sense because it's physics and it's all about created hormones that are affected our body if we think negatively or we think positively. That's physics, and that's a proven thing. But when people do come, there's a lot of sense of overwhelm, stress, anxiety, frustration, anger. They are energetic, mentally exhausted, and physically exhausted as well. So, a sense of helplessness and all that stuff. And then on the other side, basically, it's really that sense of peace, fulfillment, joy, detachment from the outcome. You're talking about results. Yes, they can have the results on the other side, but they will also have the sense of fulfillment with it, and not the feeling of the overwhelmed and exhaustion, like they have to push it through, because it's not in the struggle and pushing through the wall that you can actually get to your highest results, because sometimes you know there's a much more effortless state, and that like you get into the state of flow, and you can create something without the resistance and without the struggle and without the effort, and you have the result, but you also have the sense of fulfillment, satisfaction, because you had it works in a completely different way. And that's what I mean by effortless leadership as well. You come as a leader from the higher standpoint, where it's not leading by force and anger and pushing the people in yourself, but connecting the right talents and the passions, and getting more connected to your intuition and to that state of flow, and finding the solutions and win-win perspectives rather than pushing through at any cost, because it does cost something somewhere. And so the other side, effortless happiness, people are able to respond rather than react. They're solving their conflicts, and a better sense as well. They work less and get more
Yeah, no,
results, or
yeah.
whatever you want to call it.
Well, I think it makes sense, right? That if we're working in our essence, to your point, if we take the physics of energy and you start talking about the physiological effects of hormones, and if our mindset creates the results, which I don't think any rational person is going to argue, then the next step is, okay, if I'm optimizing for happiness and fulfillment, and come in and be in a creator mindset, then what is that going to attract? What type of response will I get from those around me? Who's going to want to be around me? And to your point,
Yeah.
then you get this effortless leadership that comes out of it. So I love all that, and I think that you're making some amazing points on what can be for so many people. And I feel like today more than ever that we live in a world where There's a lot of comparison. We live in a world where, people are more disconnected than ever, even before the pandemic. And now you layer on top of that physically not being able to interact in a lot of places. There's a lot of unhappiness that we seem to be having, creating more and more unhappiness in this world. And I think the time is right for this type of work for people to be doing. So I appreciate very much that you're doing this work, and I think that it's like anything that we can do here at the Greatness Machine to support you and what you're doing. I'm all for it. So thank you so much. It's
Thank you.
very cool.
Thank you for your work to do this.
Yeah, no, when I started this, this show is born out of an event that I put on October 10th, 2012 at the De Young Museum in San Francisco. It was a TEDx event called TEDx Golden Gate Park. And I'd hit a point in my life where I had been like just doing stuff for money for, at that point, what was that, 12 years. And so I'm going to do something that has nothing to do with money. I'm going to go and, explore this idea of people who are living their passions and against the odds, creating greatness. And so I did this one day event. Again, this is 9 years ago, and it was amazing. Like it was a really cool event. We had some great speakers, and I did it again 1 year later, and then I got too busy with my business. But all the time I said I really want to create a podcast that really explores this idea of people who are living their greatness to create, living their passions to create greatness in the world. And so the 9 year anniversary of that just happened like over the weekend, and I think,
Congratulations.
yes, well, it's what created this. I started wanting to do the show, but it's really around this message that you're talking about, which is how can people show up to be their best selves? Because I think we live in a world where people are told what they can't do a lot, and unfortunately, people believe when people tell them that, which is like even worse. And I even think that like you're a great example of someone that came out of the Soviet Union to a country where you didn't speak the language, to end up in 6 different countries in Europe, to now be doing this work after a bunch of other entrepreneurial endeavors. That's an amazing story in of itself. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So, hey, where can people find you, Natalia? I'd love to have the guests the audience that wants to connect with you to learn more about what you're doing at Life by Design Academy. Can you maybe give where they can connect with you, and then we'll get you wrapped up here.
Certainly. Well, it's Natalya Verdikyan everywhere, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, just like you see on my name there. And you can go to the website www.lifebydesign-academy.com. You can sign up for free inspiration around energy and more. And there's a lot of free resources on the website as well available to you.
Very cool. Natalia, thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you for doing it.
Yeah,
Stay great.
so much gratitude, guys. We'll see you guys later. We got more shows coming up next week, and peace out. We love you guys.